Hello, everyone, and welcome to Movie Goodness, where we examine life through cinema here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed, and today's episode is different from your normal movie goodness format. Normally, we talk about a pop culture or a current event type situation, and then we review a movie that's related to said situation. Well, we're doing things a little different today. We're doing something that, quite honestly, I feel need to be done because a lot of people for the next couple of months are going to enter into this MCU, enter into these new films that are being released from Marvel Studios and Disney, and won't know what is going on. And I think a lot of that will stem from the Falcon in the Winter Soldier, which was on Disney Plus, that little mini series that starred Anthony Mackie and Sebastian Stan, and a lot of elements from that show will play a part in Captain America: A Brave New World, as well as Thunderbolts, which comes out in May. But most recently, or coming in the foreseeable future, in the next couple of days to be exact, is Captain America: Brave New World. And so I wanted to kind of go over the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, that mini series that dropped on Disney Plus March of 2021, right after the pandemic, right when everybody was trying to get back to normal. And I say trying because we still haven't gotten back to normal. But that show is deeply connected to this movie, and I haven't seen the movie yet. I will see it this upcoming Friday when it comes out, and so be on the lookout for that review Friday after I have seen Captain America: Brave New World. But the show, just going by the trailers, just going by the clips that they released, I can tell that a lot of the story is rooted in this show. And I know a lot of people did not watch this show. A lot of people that I know didn't watch it. But to be fair, it's not anything against the Falcon and the Winter Soldier per se. A lot of people haven't watched any of the Disney Plus shows. People I talk to or who are deeply into these MCU films. But they kind of got lost in the shuffle with WandaVision, with Loki and Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and so on and so forth. They haven't watched it. They hadn't kept up with it. And it's going to hurt going down the line. I remember when Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness came out, and my sister-in-law had texted me. She was like, oh, I want to go. I can't wait to go see it. But did I need to see WandaVision first? And I'm like, well, I don't know because I hadn't seen it yet. This was right before the movie came out. But I'm like, well, I haven't seen it yet, but I would assume so because Wanda goes through something in WandaVision that I'm assuming is going to affect her in the film. That we will see her be this villain because she was the villain in Doctor Strange. And so you won't understand why she's this villain, why she is on the search for children, and you don't know the story. If you're not into the comics and into the lore of the character, you will have no idea what's going on. Case in point, you look at U.S. Agent. U.S. Agent will show up in Thunderbolts, who is played by Wyatt Russell, the son of Kurt Russell. You go see Thunderbolts, you're like, who is this? Where is he from? Well, that character, John Walker, was introduced in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I know a lot of people have seen Julia Louis-Dreyfus pop up in a couple of movies over the last couple of years as Valentina Fontaine. I can't remember the whole name. But anyways, you're like, well, where does she come from? Well, she first showed up in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. See, a lot of characters have popped up over the since the iteration of these Disney Plus shows, and a lot of people haven't watched them, and they go to watch the films and they're super confused. Another example, you look at the Marvels. Now, the Marvels were what they were. The movie was, yeah. So you still, and that's for people who watch the Disney Plus shows and the movies, you still have the problem with the people who haven't watched the Disney Plus shows. Who are these people that are with Captain Marvel? We know Captain Marvel, but who is Miss Marvel? Who's the black chick? Where did they come from? Well, Miss Marvel has her own show, or at least had her own show on Disney Plus. And Monica Rambeau, well, she showed up in WandaVision. So we really we are in an age where if you're a true fan of the MCU, of these films and all of the storytelling that's involved, you have to really be invested in all of it. You can't just skip the movie. I guess you can. For those of you who don't really care, you just want to be entertained. I get that too. But I never was that person. I needed to see everything. It's just like when I was growing up reading comic books, we had to read it all. Every issue we had to read the little side issues that connects to the bigger event issue. Just like I remember Civil War, that event, but you couldn't just read the Civil War comics. You had to read the Captain America comics. You had to read the X-Men comics. You had to read Spider-Man comics and all of these different side comics that were linked up with the Civil War storyline in order to get the whole story. And it gets confusing at times because you got to really keep up with it. But if you're into it, it's not a big deal. It's the same thing here. It's the exact same thing, just changing the pages of a comic to the TV and movie screen. You know what I'm saying? So that's where my head was when I thought about Captain America, Brave New World. What do I need to remember from the Falcon and the Winter Soldier? Is there any, plot point that I need to know going into I don't think so. I don't think you need anything from the Falcon and the Winter Soldier in order to appreciate Captain America, Brave New World. Now, with Thunderbolts, maybe. Uh, is a possibility because, like I said, there are a couple of characters in that film that you need to know their backstory, their history, what they've done to get to that point where we find them in that movie, and it's very important. In particular, John Walker, U.S. agent. It's very important that you know where that character genesis is and is in this show. We're gonna go over a couple of points. We're not gonna, we're doing a revisit of this show, but we're not gonna go point by point, every single episode, every single Easter egg, and all that other stuff. I'm not doing it. I don't have the time, patience, or the temperament to go through all of that. I did rewatch the show. It when they dropped it in 2021, it was week to week, if I'm not mistaken, and that's how I had to watch it. This go around, or maybe I just watched it that way. I don't remember, but I know I didn't binge it the first time, but I binged it this time with zero expectations because I know everything that happened in the show. So we're just gonna go over a few characters and plot points throughout and kind of, get ourselves excited for Captain America Brave New World. Because I'm gonna be 100% honest with everybody here. This is the first time that I've not watched yet, but about to go into a Marvel film that I have zero excitement for. I have no excitement to go see this movie. I am not hyped up at all. Don't get me wrong. I think it's going to be decent. I think it'll be entertaining, but I have reservations about this film. For some strange reason, I am not confident that they're going to hit the mark here. Before we get into the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, let's give a little backstory on uh, Captain America: Brave New World and how it came to be. First and foremost, we all know that Chris Evans, who starred in many versions of this character throughout the MCU, Captain America, as Steve Rogers, his final go around was in Avengers Endgame, where he hung up the shield. Well, didn't hang it up. He passed it on to Sam Wilson, to Anthony Mackie, to keep the torch burning. And that was kind of a shock to a lot of people. They thought that, a lot of thoughts were that he was going to pass it on to Bucky, that he was going to give it to the Winter Soldier. It it happens in the comics, but he also gives it to Sam Wilson in the comics as well. So this wasn't far fetched. They didn't really reinvent the wheel, as they say. So but the big question mark after that was, okay, they passed the shield over to Sam Wilson. What's next? What's new? How are they going to continue this story? And to be fair to Anthony Mackie, to the Falcon, to that character, to Captain America, everything after Endgame has been sluggish, and that's putting it mildly. That's putting it so kindly that I got sugar pouring out of my pores. I can't put it sweeter than that, because it has been a struggle since Endgame. I mean, it's kind of hard to capitalize, to get to that level that we got with Avengers Infinity War, and then pow, Avengers Endgame. And so it was going to be a tough task. But for those of us who love these characters, who love these films, you were willing to go through the bumps and bruises. Then you had the unfortunate event of a pandemic that slammed right after all that happened. So that put a lot of strain on not only this franchise, all franchises, and our lives, more importantly, but it really hampered the production of a lot of Marvel's storytelling, and it affected almost everything. And like I said, if the pandemic affected everything, every single element of our lives, buying groceries all the way up to seeing movies. So it wasn't out of the realm, but you have to understand, when it comes to movies, in this aspect, the films were shut down. Some storylines had to be changed. The way they shot films had to be changed, because actors and directors and crew members, they couldn't be around each other. They had to be distant, social distancing. So a lot of scenes had to be shot certain ways, because you couldn't have close-ups or two people in frame at the same time. And if you go back and watch movies, I say go back, it hadn't been that long. It's only been 5 years. But if you look back on films that came out around 2022 or 2023, watch how those movies look. Pay attention to how those films look, and TV shows, how actors in certain scenes, you can see actors kind of like holding their breath. If they had to be in a scene with somebody while they're talking, you can see that their mouth closed and they're kind of holding their breath because they can't breathe. They can't inhale the air, because everybody was freaked out by the pandemic. And so it's just funny to go back and see, because I watched Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, and that was shot during the pandemic. And if you notice, Tom Cruise isn't in a scene with nobody. In the scenes when he is with paired off with somebody, like Haley Atwell, ironically enough, a part of the Captain America franchise, but you can tell that they're kind of holding their breath when they're together. They don't speak at the same time. It's weird. It's very weird, and the way that film is shot is super weird. I think that played a part in the quality of that movie, why it wasn't super successful, even though it wasn't as good as the rest of them. It was still a good movie. But anyways, getting off track. But it was hard to make these films and TV shows during that time. For instance, when we speak of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier had to change the storyline, the plot line of the show. It dealt with the release of a virus, a global virus that was going to send the world into a pandemic. That was the plot of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So they had to hurry up and change that on the fly while they were shooting. That's why, if you remember, if you watch the show, it just feels jumbled up at the end. It feels like they just rushed a lot of the story along towards the last 2 or 3 episodes. It just ended. You know, you had plot lines that were set up early on in the season that were just abandoned for the rest of the season. Yeah, it was really it was tough. And so you had that problem. And then the big elephant in the room, let's be honest, everybody, Sam Wilson. It was the fact that Sam Wilson got the shield and not Bucky. And this show dealt with that a little bit. They touched in on that a tad, but it didn't really go in depth with it because that was Steve Rogers' wish. You know, he handed it over to Sam Wilson. But the issue is there are a lot of people, I'm not talking about you all, maybe I am, which I don't know why you're listening to the show, but in case you didn't know, I'm black. I'm pretty sure a lot of people tuned out right now. But yeah, it was the issue that a black man is Captain America. And it's true. I'm not making this up. It's not a fantasy. This dominated social media for a while, probably still will, especially after this movie comes out. But that was an issue for a lot of people that they just could not get past. And that's ridiculous to me. We're talking about a fictional character. We're not talking about Abraham Lincoln being cast in the what's the Denzel Washington being cast as Abraham Lincoln. We're not going down that road. You know, like, oh my God, what are they doing? Yeah, I would be upset by that. Like, man, this is ridiculous. You know, we're talking about a superhero who passed the torch to another character. And a lot of people did not like that and did not support the show because of that, and probably not going to support this movie because of that. So there's that issue. Now, this show was in development before Endgame, before Infinity War. They being Marvel were already setting things in place. You know, Kevin Feige always thinks like 10 years ahead. So all of this stuff that's coming out now is not on the fly. He thought about this 10 years ago. So it's not even it's not a joke reaction or whatever. Now, what they do with the film and how they film it and how they change things in the story, that's something that will happen on the day probably, or after discussions over a couple of weeks while filming. But as far as the film and the TV shows, those were set in stone years ago. So this show was first greenlit in 2018, and it was going to star Anthony Mackie, Sebastian Stan. They had all signed on to continue with these characters. Marvel hired Malcolm Spellman to be the head writer on the series, and the show was officially entitled The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, April of 2019. And so after Endgame, when Steve Rogers bequeathed the shield and mantle of Captain America to Sam Wilson, the series shows Wilson accepting the manner and coming to terms with the implications of that as a black man. Now, this is where I was so excited for this show. I was so happy for this show because I wanted to see the world and the country, even though, but the world too, but more importantly, the country, how they're going to react to a black man being Captain America, and really dive into those deep, dark issues, something that this country needs to face. And I thought that Marvel, I thought that Disney were really going to go there. And I was so hyped up for this show. I was looking forward to Falcon and the Winter Soldier more than I was to WandaVision for that reason, around that time, because WandaVision came out around the same time as well. But I was so excited. And the show came out and they touched in on it, with kids' gloves. They didn't really dive into it. And then as the season went on, it just abandoned it. It just went boof. Its story had no weight. And you want to talk about frustrated. And that was one of the reasons I was so upset with this show. And still is. Still is. On rewatch, I got even more upset. Probably shouldn't have rewatched, but but I was more upset. Not because the show was quote unquote bad. The show was decent. This is 6 episodes. The show was decent. The show picks up 6 months after Endgame. It's 6 months after Sam Wilson received the shield from Steve Rogers and took on the mantle of Captain America at the end of that film. And so Sam Wilson, he teams up with Bucky Barnes. They go on this global mission to stop these this terrorist group, the Flash Smashers. They're from the comics, and they have enhancements with the super soldier serum, and they believe the world is better after the blip. And so after Thanos snapped and the Avengers reversed the snap, now this group is mad because they felt the world was a better place during the snap. That the world was cleaner, everything, the whole spiel that Thanos gave, that I'm saving everybody by killing half the universe and all this here. And you can make the argument that Thanos probably was right, but that's we're not going to get in that debate. And so that was the plot of the show. And look, I'm cool with that plot. I'm glad that they moved on from the pandemic one because too soon. But I wanted to see more of the dealing with the shield as a black man element, because that's a big part of Sam Wilson's character. At least it's a big part of him in the comics when he took over the mantle. And I really thought they were going to dive into this. I thought that this show would have more of a buddy cop element as well. One of my favorite subgenres in action films, buddy cop movies like 48 Hours and Lethal Weapon and, Midnight Run, stuff like that. I thought that this was going to be that type of show. And it didn't have that element. It really kind of skewed to other things, setting up other things, something that Marvel is guilty of in a number of their films. They didn't just keep it all for the Falcon and Winter Soldier. I can think back to Avengers Age of Ultron, which was basically a movie that was a commercial for the next phase in the MCU. They set up, that movie was there to set up every film after. That was the whole point of that movie. And you want to talk about sitting in a theater mad. Like, what was the point? Why did you waste such a good villain as Ultron in a film that all we're doing right now is setting up movies for the next phase? It was frustrating. I just did not like it. But this show does it as well. Like I said, the character of U.S. Agent, didn't really follow him much in the comics, but I was excited to see Wyatt Russell, in this type of role, because for years, even before the boom of the comic book movie, I would have paid money, hard cash, to see his dad as a superhero, even though we kind of got that with Sky High. You remember that film from the early 2000s? He played a superhero, but he was old at that point, But I would have loved to see Kurt Russell as a bona fide comic book character, but we didn't get that. We did get him in a comic book film as Ego the Living Planet, but it is what it is. But Wyatt Russell is a actor that I like. He has that same gravitas as his dad. I really fell in love with him in Overlord. Awesome movie. If you have not seen Overlord, check it out. That is a great movie. And ironically, Overlord is directed by the same director of Captain America Brave New World. So maybe it has a chance. But anyways, this character needed to really kind of hit home, and it did. I think the character of John Walker, portrayed by Wyatt Russell, is the best thing to come out of this show. And I'm glad that we're going to get to see him again in Thunderbolts. But that story of John Walker, he was a military guy. He was chosen to be the new Captain America after everybody decided that Sam Wilson couldn't be the new Captain America. They wanted a white boy. Let's just call it what it is. They wanted a white man to be Captain America, and they chose him as this decorated war hero and whatnot. Gave him the super soldier serum, and he went crazy because he wasn't as decorated as he claimed to be. He's done some terrible things while he was at on tour. And so he flips out. He killed the guy in public and all this here with the shield. And that was cool. And I loved where that character was going. But it was kind of wasted because we didn't see any redemption from that character. Now, it appears that we're going to get somewhat of that in Thunderbolts, but look how long we had to wait for this. But I wanted that character to play a bigger role in this show. Like I said, I think this show suffered from the pandemic. It really, really hurt this show because I think they had more and they had to hurry up and just, we're going to stop it right here. That's where it felt like. It felt like they hit the gas and then all of a sudden had to slam on brakes, and they thought they had more road than they did. But that character was the best thing to come out of this show. The villain in this show, like I said, they set her up pretty good when the season started, and then it filtered towards the end. Really couldn't. It was a villain that you couldn't kind of get behind, but by the end, it was like, what's the point of you even being here? What's the point of this? I did like the dynamic between Bucky and Sam in this show. They really, I like the chemistry between Anthony Mackie and Sebastian Stan. They look like they are really good friends in real life. It isn't just movie foolishness. They actually look like they like each other in real life, and that's a plus because you can see it on screen. You can also see it in the reverse way. You can tell when people don't like each other. When two actors don't too much care for each other, it projects on screen every time. But luckily we didn't have that problem here. The character of Isaiah Bradley, who I remember reading in the comics, he was this old black veteran who I think he was in the Korean War, if I'm not mistaken, but he took the super soldier serum and he's the super soldier, but he was imprisoned and experimented on for 30 years. All this is happening while Steve Rogers is, of course, frozen. And so they were experimenting with others, and he was experimented on with the super soldier serum, and it worked on him. So instead of making him the Captain America, they decided to experiment on him for 30 years. And the subplot there was him and Sam Wilson talking, and Isaiah expressing the fact that they'll never make you Captain America. You're black. They'll never see you as Captain America. Look what they did to me. Look how they treated me. And I was a war hero. And look how they treated me. And I was like, man, okay, we're diving back in it. Okay, that's why they left it. So we can get this big story. No. No, we got about 2 episodes with Isaiah Bradley, who's played in this show by Carl Lampley. Ironically enough, if you ever watched if you're old enough, y'all remember in the 90s, they had a TV show called Mantis. It was a superhero show. And Carl Lampley was the star of it. Mantis, he was a paralyzed, I think he was a scientist or a doctor or something. I can't remember off the top of my head. But he had this suit that allowed him to walk, but not only allowed him to walk, but gave him abilities. I love that show. I loved it. Even I know if I watch it now, I'll probably get about 5 minutes into it and cut it off because it's the 90s. But this is during the era where we weren't getting superhero properties frequently. We had to take it out. We got it. But I like that little show, and he was the star of that show. I thought that was cool. Also, another little point here. He will be in Captain America Brave New World. So once again, you're going to go watch this film and wonder, who is this? If you haven't seen the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, it's crazy. But there is a connection there. He has a grandson, Eli Bradley. He appeared in the show as well. But the big bugaboo, the one thing about this show that just drove me crazy, and to this day, it just makes no sense to me, is the fact that Karen Carter is in this show as well. And Karen Carter, she was a former agent with S.H.I.E.L.D. At one point, her and Steve Rogers looked like they were going to boom shoom, and she so happened to be, I think, the niece. I think she's the niece of Peggy Carter, who is Steve Rogers' one true love. But that's besides the point. They turned her into the villain. Just randomly. She's the villain. That was the big reveal at the end of this episode. And I was like, or the end of the season, I was like, man, are you serious? Are you serious? And Emily Van Camp, she came back to reprise the role. I'm like, are you serious? But I was willing to go with it if we would have gotten more. We didn't get more. We've yet to see her appear in anything else since this. I don't know. I mean, she's the power broker now. And so are we going to get anything from this character? Will she appear in Captain America Brave New World? Who knows? I don't know. But at this point, man, come on. I mean, but why change that character? I don't know enough about her character in the comics to put my head on a chopping block and say that this doesn't happen in the comics. I couldn't tell you yay or nay on that. Maybe in most recent comics or something. But as far as I can remember, this never happened. And she's such a beloved character, to change her like that. It wasn't so much the change. I can deal with the change. It was just the abrupt change. It was just the out of nowhereness of it all, and it was supposed to be a shock. It was supposed to be but it didn't have that effect on me. It was nothing but anger in my case. But it is what it is. Overall, the show was what it was. I looked at it as a show that got us through the pandemic, or at the end of the pandemic when things were trying to get back to some normalcy. We got this show. Initially, the show was supposed to come out before WandaVision, but with all of the shooting schedules and whatnot being thrown off by the pandemic, they saw that WandaVision was further along than the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Not to mention that they had to change the ending and the subplot in this show. And so that's how WandaVision came out before the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. But I mean, hey, it didn't matter which came out first, but at the time, I was more excited for this show than I was for WandaVision. Boy, was I mistaken, because WandaVision is still probably my favorite of the Disney Plus shows. Nah, Loki. Loki season 1. Uh, it's close. It's close. We done had some good ones now. I'm not poo-pooing on the shows. It's only a couple of them that was kind of, I'll probably never go back and watch, but for the most part, they were what they were. But in any event, yeah, I had to touch in on this before we went and checked out Captain America: Brave New World, and I just wanted to pop in and talk to everybody about the show. In case you haven't seen the show, you still got time before Captain America: Brave New World comes out. Watch the show. It's 6 episodes. You can blaze through it. I blazed through it in one day, in one sitting, and so it's not that hard. It's decent. It really is decent. I have my problems with it, but it's decent. Plus, if you want to, keep everything canon, keep everything on the level, going in, watching these Marvel shows and movies, you kind of want to get caught up. So now is the time. Go check it out, and we'll go check out Captain America: Brave New World together this weekend on Valentine's Day, the day of love. But once again, I will say this. I have so many questions about that movie. So many questions about that movie. You notice that Marvel is dropping a lot of clips of that film. A lot of clips. They don't do that with movies. They normally keep everything on the hush hush. They don't say nothing. They don't, reveal anything. They hurried up and revealed that Red Hulk was going to be in it. I mean, you look online, you can probably find a clip of the whole fight. I've been staying away from them because I want to see the movie, but it seems like every other day I see a new clip of Captain America come out. I'm like, why they keep, I've never seen Marvel do this. This is weird. It's like they don't have faith in the movie. And I have reason to believe that they don't. There's a lot of problems with this film. This film was supposed to come out last year, but they had to shut it down and virtually reshoot the ending, add characters, take characters out of this movie, go a different direction. They had to rewrite a lot of the material. They had to change one character completely from the way she is in the comics because of the Israel Hamas issue over there, and it's just a mess. It's a mess of a film, but we'll see, man. Can they stick this together? Also, well, once again, you have to be in the know with all of these films and TV shows. A big part of this film is going to deal with Tiamat, the celestial that has been frozen in the sea for 3 years, as far as movie watching time goes, because that celestial died in the Eternals. So we're finally getting around to that after that has never been addressed. But apparently that celestial is made out of animanium, which is the metal that is used for Wolverine's skeleton. So they're starting to plant the seeds for mutants. We finally got mutants being used as a title, as a word, as a species. And now we're getting elements that is needed for these mutants to be in existence in the MCU. So that's exciting. And it is going to be exciting to see Harrison Ford as Thunderbolt Ross. We all know he took over the role after the passing of William Hurt, who passed away a couple of years ago. So it's going to be interesting to see. I don't know what this movie has in store for us. I have no idea. Honestly, normally, and this is with them releasing half the movie with clips. I still don't know what this movie's about. And I guess that's a good thing, but why show so much? Ah, I am scared. I am scared to death. But I would love to know, how did you feel about the Falcon and the Winter Soldier? Did you like the show? Did you even see the show? Do you even have Disney Plus? And plus, I would like to know, are you looking forward to Captain America Brave New World? Let me know by email. Email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. You can also search for the show on all social media platforms. Just search for the KB Radio Network. Also, don't forget about us on YouTube. Subscribe to the KB Radio Network channel and like this video if you don't mind. Don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing this show. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are currently listening to movie goodness here on the KB Radio Network. Everybody, thank you for joining me for this kind of a dive back into the world of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which was released on Disney Plus, all in anticipation for Captain America Brave New World. Want you all to know that I love you, continue to love everyone, and until we speak again, you all be blessed.